This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com.
Alpha Natural Resources. Consistent with its Running Right process, Alpha is an energy company committed to being a leader in mine safety and an environmental steward. We fuel progress around the world. More information at alphanr.com.
The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. Information at vachamber.com. Virginia hospitals and health systems provide jobs. They support our economy and promote public health. Local hospitals are always open to help people with unexpected health needs. Having a stable healthcare network is vital. Virginia hospitals are our lifeline.
It's amazing what my students with special needs can accomplish. Their pride is priceless. That's why I teach.
Brought to you by the Virginia Education Association, because a good education is good for everybody.
Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.
Welcome to This Week in Richmond, and a very special welcome to Delegate Lamont Bagby. It's good to have you as a guest. I'll tell our viewers that we've known each other for some time from your previous service in Henrico County on the school board.
Yes, sir.
You are the newest incumbent member of the House.
It happened all so quickly.
At one point in time recently, you were 100th in seniority, and then after some people stepped aside and all, you moved up to number 89 already. And so if people are going online and looking you up, and they can go on your website, they'll see that you were elected in a special election and then re-elected in the election just this past November. We were talking before we started the show that actually you have run about 4 times in less than 12 months.
Yes, yeah. Back in December, we had the Democratic caucus. In June, we had the primary. In July 21st, we had the special election. 2 days later, I was sworn in, and then in November, I was reelected to the 74th.
All right. Now, I mentioned Henrico, but tell the viewers the area that you represent.
So, on the school board, I represented the Fairfield District, and that's primarily Eastern Henrico, with the exception of Varina. And so, in the House of Delegates, I represent the same district or the same constituents in the Fairfield District. I just pick up a bit of Northside Richmond and all of Charles City, along with Highland Springs and Sandston. Yes.
Well, now, education has been one of your passions for some time, both in your vocation and your service, community service on the school board. As you think about the upcoming session, are there education issues or other issues that you hope to be working on?
Yeah, well, I served as a teacher, and I've served as a administrator and on the school board for 8 years, and I also served, Governor McCullough appointed me to the Norfolk State University Board of Visitors, which is a school that I also attended for undergrad.
Right.
And so education has always been my passion. Even now, I serve as the Director of Operations at a place called Peter Paul Development Center in the heart of Churchill, in one of the most saturated, impoverished communities in not only Richmond, but across the state. And so education has always been, I think, the great equalizer. I think you will hear that from a number of individuals that have served in those capacities. And so what I will be looking to do is not necessarily bring about additional policies, but to kind of focus in on the policies that we already have and see about having some of these unfunded mandates funded, and also about maybe reconciling some of these policies that we have and looking to see if some of them are a bit outdated and just impacting our schools and our students in a negative way.
Going back to that special election you had back in the summer, then you actually then were, I guess, were here for about a one-day session.
Yes.
that occurred.
Yes.
And so while you ran as an incumbent, you are a second time now elected, this will be really your first full-fledged General Assembly coming up.
Yes, that was an interesting one-day session. We were told that it probably would last most of the week. But being a rookie, I didn't know that I should stay in my seat and not wander off to the Senate chamber. So I wandered off to the Senate chamber during our break, and I heard them whispering and talking about how they were preparing to go home. So I came back over to our chamber and I told the folks that were gathered around, because 100 sits right there in the front. So folks were gathered in front of my desk, kind of chatting, and I said, "Hey, we're going home." And everybody looked at me and said, "Rookie, you don't know what you're talking about."
Right.
Next thing you know, here comes our friends from the Senate letting us know that they are, in fact, going home. So, hey, sometimes rookies can find some information that they shouldn't be able to find.
Yes, you gave them the scoop. Now, as you think of the upcoming session, I guess you still will be in the process of learning your committees that you'll be on, or had some conversation with the speaker?
I guess the first call that anyone wants to make is a conversation with the speaker about their committees. As you can imagine, as you already speculated, education is something that I really have a passion for, and that's from K-12, pre-K through K-12 on through higher education is where my passion is, and so I'm prayerful that I will be appointed to the Education Committee. I also have a passion for healthcare, and so hoping to be appointed to HWI. And then the third one, is a stretch, but we'll keep our fingers crossed.
Right. We'll let our viewers know, or someone may not know, that it certainly is the practice in the House where you serve that newly elected people meet with the Speaker and get acquainted, and the Speaker can have some personal information, as the Speaker will make those appointments. After the election that just occurred this past November, I saw some of the freshmen.
Yeah.
You really won't be a freshman now. You're a class ahead of that, but freshmen going in and out of the Speaker's office to talk with him and to let him know about their areas of passion and see if they might be appointed to one of those committees.
And I think it's good, not only the Speaker, but I think it's good for us to meet as freshmen or semi-freshmen, red shirt freshmen or whatever it may be.
Right.
I think it's good for us to speak not only to the Speaker, that's most important for committees and understanding the ways of the House, but also other individuals on the other side of the aisle. And so I've been really, really fortunate enough to have good relationships with folks like Chris Peace and John O'Bannon and Peter Farrell. I really have enjoyed those relationships and look forward to building those relationships with additional folks that on the other side of the aisle.
Now, very recently there's been some orientation for the newly elected members of the House, and while there were 11 of them, you were able to join them for that orientation as well.
And so on the 23rd, when I was sworn in, my family left.
Well, that's back in July.
The 23rd of July, my family was here, and we celebrated and so forth. And then they left, and then the clerk's office helped me with a little bit of the orientation and transition. But so I still wanted to gain more and be able to have that second dosage of orientation. So we pick and chose some of the parts of the orientation that we participated in, because the folks that are in the clerk's office are top shelf, and as much as you can learn from them. I would encourage anyone, whether it's a member of the House or a constituent, that those are the folks that know what's really going on here.
One of the big things that'll be happening particularly for the other 11, but also I would think for you, would be determining which room you'll be in this building, the
Yeah.
General Assembly building. And viewers probably know, we'll remind them that really goes by seniority.
It goes
and
by
it comes
seniority.
right on down to making choices. The nice change that was made, maybe almost 2 decades ago, is that your phone number is the district phone number.
Yes.
And I
1174.
like to say that the number doesn't belong to the delegate or to the senator. It belongs to that district. And as changes are made, so if for our folks around the Commonwealth who may be represented by one of the newest 11 members of the House, if they were in contact with their former delegate, they've got the phone number
Exactly.
when the session
Exactly.
starts.
698-1174.
Yeah, but that's yours. And again, as you even pointed that out, being representing the 74th district, the nice thing is that the last 2 digits
Yeah.
are the district number. Now, for Delegate Bloxham on the Eastern Shore, he has 100, so he has the last 3 digits of his, but those numbers stay the same.
Yeah.
And some of us old timers can remember when the numbers changed after every election.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the numbers changed, and then you've been trying to figure out, now, how do I get in touch with my senator or my delegate?
Yeah.
And same thing over in the Senate. Those phone numbers will be saying the same. So,
Yeah, and it actually made it easy for me because I stayed in constant contact as a member of the school board with my delegate and my senator, so I didn't have a hard time remembering the number. It works out.
yeah. Well, we're coming up here soon, and there'll be some deadlines, pre-filed bills, and then other bills to be introduced. Any particular bills that you expect to be working on that you can let the public around the Commonwealth know?
Yeah, well, we intended to be all intentional about not having too many bills the first go around, but it's really no days off, and so we've learned that they're kind of accumulating, and so we have bills from everything that address school nutrition and child hunger to legislation that will impact the relationship between the police officers and the school system, and how you address the classroom, and how we want to turn keep our classrooms, not courtrooms, or
Right.
but maintain the public safety. And then we also have some legislation that will impact the amount that is required for something to be grand larceny. It's a host of things that have come up either from constituents or folks in the governor's office that we've been conversing with, that it's just kind of hard to just say, hey, let's roll by this for a year. I think there are things that need to be done. Automatic restoration of rights is one thing that we just can't wait on. We want to have that bill in.
And representing all of one county, and then part of another county and part of the city, you, like your colleagues, will be approached maybe already, or even as it nears the deadline, by the local governing bodies to say, we have a bill that we want you to put in, and so that your plate can get filled pretty quickly.
And I think it's a gift more so than a curse, but the fact that in Charles City, where it's so rural, and then most of Henrico is moving towards urban, but it's still suburban, and then you have the city of Richmond. It's just an awesome blend, but you have to be mindful of how one piece of legislation will impact the other. So if it's a piece of legislation that impacts a saturated district positively, it may not do that for the rural community. And I can't forget about my friends in Charles City. They've let me know that.
That's a challenge that not all legislators have, but as you mentioned it, there's quite a few legislators that have that same challenge in the House or in the Senate, where they represent districts that are not all the same population-wise and density and so forth. So that'd be interesting. Well, Delegate Bagby, we really appreciate getting a chance to showcase you. Number 89 among the 100 delegates, a new member of the General Assembly.
I want to keep it 100, but
yes, but there had to be some others elected, so they've changed your number, and as people see vehicles being driven around the state, the number of your seniority is the number of your license tag. And so that's another clue that people know, oh, that must be my senator, my delegate. If they know their district number, they've seen that.
Jimmy Massey came by my day job, my office, and chatted with me a little while last weekend. So the children there were looking at his place and said, hey, you're 100, he's 38. Wow.
Yes.
So, I think we at least pay attention to it.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you very much for being on This
Thank
Week
you.
in Richmond, and I look forward to having you back again.
Thank you.
Reflecting on the session sometime later next year.
I hope I'm still in one piece.
Yes, right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy Phillips, thank you very much for coming back on This Week in Richmond. I think it's been a year or so since we've had you on.
I think you're right.
Legislative Assistant to Delegate Jennifer McClellan from here in the city of Richmond. You and some of your colleagues have been very helpful to our viewers in the past, and so we want to tap into your expertise now to help people around the state know what should they be doing before the session convenes January 13th? Obviously, they shouldn't be waiting until the 13th, but what's your message to them about what should they be doing now if they haven't already done it?
Sure. So I always like to encourage people to start building a relationship with their legislators and their legislator staff as early as possible.
Right.
We get busier and busier the closer we get to session, so it is helpful to start getting to know folks as early on as possible. So, and you might not even have a specific policy concern right now before the bills are introduced, but that doesn't mean you can't still reach out and say, you know, my name is Sam and I live in your district and I'm one of your constituents and I want you to know these are some of the concerns I'm passionate about and I'd like to stay in touch with you about these things. And it's good to do that through an email or even picking up the phone and giving the offices a call. So both of those things can be really effective. And then during session, if you decide to come down and visit, you can remind us, you know, I'm Sam and I emailed you about a month ago talking about some of these issues that I'm concerned about. And then when you remind me, I'll remember that you've been in touch with us and you've been putting some effort towards building a relationship with our office.
I think our regular viewers know who represents them in the Senate and in the House, but for any new viewers who might be watching today, if they Google who's my legislator, even don't have to put Virginia in usually, about the first site that will pop up is a very friendly, easy to use site. Put in your address and there you get all of your contacts from federal and state.
It's a really useful website. In my job, I use that website at least 4 or 5 times a week, sometimes more, just trying to make sure that I know the folks that are contacting us live in the district. But in addition to that, I can help direct people to their legislators by using that website as well, just in case we're not their representative, helping educate them on who their representative is. And it is also really nice because you get to see the different levels of your representatives. So you can also see the federal level legislators as well. And it's all in one place, which is very helpful. So you can click right from that website to email your legislator.
Yes. Oh, extremely
It's a
handy.
little box that you just click on and it takes you right into an email format to send a message, which is very convenient.
You know, another good place they can go is VPAP, VPAP.org, and they can They can look at the 11 pictures of the 11 newcomers, or they can put a name in, they can find contacts. So it's another good resource for people to use.
Absolutely. And we did just have an election, so you might have a new legislator. There were, in the House, I believe we had at least 12 new members that were elected. So one of your districts could be have a new representative. So you might have known yours in the past, but as of January 1, it could be a new person as well. So it's nice to just check in just to make sure you still know who your legislators are, even if you are familiar with the process. And not just the legislators, but the legislative assistants, because when people call my office, they're either going to get a hold of me or possibly one of our interns in our office. So to speak with the delegate, you typically have, or a senator, you typically have to speak to their legislative assistant first. So it's not just helpful to know the legislator's name, but also who the legislative assistant is, because they're typically the ones running the schedule and doing the policy research. So it's really good to build that relationship with the legislative assistant too.
Yeah, absolutely. And for people who don't come here to the Capitol, to the General Assembly building, they may think that their legislators have large offices, large staffs. They may maybe think of it almost like Washington, which is nothing like that.
Right.
And many legislators have one staff person. Some, as Delegate McClellan, usually has some interns working along with the legislative staff.
Yes.
But and you and the interns are very important people for people who want to make contact with their legislator.
Right, they're small offices that do a lot of work. So we wear many different hats in terms of the different jobs that we do for the office. But in most offices, you're right, it is just one legislative assistant. Some have two, but more frequently you just find one and maybe one or two interns. And then during session, each office also has a secretary. And so if you come down to the General Assembly to visit a legislator, probably the first person you will see is the secretary. And our office really relies on our secretary as well to greet and meet people as they're arriving. So that's another staff you could run into when you're down here. And all the secretaries tend to be really, really friendly and really welcoming.
Right.
They're wonderful.
And some of them work in that part-time position year after year after
do.
year and get to the same office too.
They
So
do.
they're regulars that people would see.
They do. So we only have the secretaries during session. We don't have them throughout the year. We miss them when they're not there throughout the year. But during session, we've had the same secretary in our office during session since I've been in Delegate McClellan's office. So she's been very, very helpful to us. Also someone that people can rely on when they come by to visit, because they typically know a lot of what's going on.
Now you mentioned email, telephoning. What do you and your colleagues, as you talk with them, find to be the best way for a constituent who maybe hasn't met the legislator, doesn't know the legislator, but they want to bring a certain bill or a certain subject to their legislator's attention?
Yeah, I think starting with an email is wonderful. I think sometimes email can be a little less intimidating. When you pick up a phone and make a call, you never know who's going to pick up.
Right.
So sometimes I think an email is nice, and that way you can lay out the concerns that you have, and then also maybe even put in a little information that you know about that particular subject. If you know if you have done some research on the topic and you have some details, will allow you to elaborate a little bit on that topic. And email can allow you to really set that up in a nice format. And oftentimes it can be nice to follow up with a phone call. Again, when you think about developing that relationship, an email is wonderful, but you also have to remember that during the legislative session, we may receive hundreds of emails a day. So you could be one email of 200. So to make your email maybe have a larger voice, you could follow up with a phone call in addition to the email, so that what you do stands out even more, especially if you're thinking about the mass volume. Taking that extra step can be helpful. So I think email's great to start with, follow-up calls, and if you feel comfortable, coming down and visiting in person is really effective as well. And I think that if you've never sent an email, that doesn't mean you can't come and visit. Sometimes it's wonderful just to meet someone face to face. without an email, without a phone call. And a lot of times during session, we encourage people to make appointments if they can, but we also have people come by and visit unannounced, and that's also okay. We can't always guarantee that we'll have time to sit with you and speak with you, but we always try to make time if you've taken the time to come down and see us.
Now, one quick suggestion on the email, in the subject line, they might want to indicate their address
Yes.
right there, because during the session, if you get slammed with emails, you really want to give the most attention, and I know you do, to the constituents of your
Absolutely.
delegate, not people around the state.
Absolutely.
Abby, our time is out. We'll have you back on again, but
Great.
thank you so much here
Thank you
before the
for
session.
having me.
and
Yeah,
helping our
absolutely.
people.
We hope to see all of our constituents come down and visit
Yes.
this session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com.
Alpha Natural Resources, a leader in mine safety and an environmental steward.
The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community. For jobs, the economy, and public health, Virginia Hospitals, our lifeline.
The Virginia Education Association, because a good education is good for everybody.
Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.